Hello BookTube, it's Joshua here, and today I'm going to be doing a tag video. This is the reading shifts tag, which was created by Hannah, and in her video she tagged me, for which I'm very grateful. So thank you, Hannah. And I, I haven't really. I've been kind of focusing a little bit on my assignments, so I haven't quite had the time to do anything until now. So yeah, 2 weeks later, I'm getting to it. I do also want to show you guys a couple of books that I was actually hauled over the weekend, because it was my birthday last week. I turned 21, which means I can now travel to the US and drink, which is what everyone's been telling me. But yeah, I got my brother and my brother and his girlfriend and I, we went to a bookstore. My brother had this big box of books that he wanted to get rid of, and they exchanged that for credit. And we both got some books. So I got this, first of all. I got Edmund Wilson's The 20s. I don't know much about Edmund Wilson. I think I saw David Novak reading him at one point, but I don't know what his legacy or his reputation is, and I don't know whether this book is good, but it was a shot in the dark. And also this edition is really nice. This was $10, which isn't too bad, and whoever owned this before put this wrap around it, which made it really nice. And then I also got this Hitler biography, Hitler: A Study in Tyranny by Alan Bullock. And I've been reading Hitler biographies. I've been reading one by Ian Kershaw. He mentioned Alan Bullock, and I got that. And also I just wanted to show you guys a little kind of origami bookmark that I made on Tuesday, because I went to a club event. It was origami and cheese night, and I made a little heart bookmark. So I can put it in here. Sorry, this is really bad. Hold on. Oh wait. Oh. I can put it in here, and it keeps the place like that. You see, you put it like, you put the heart part over the page, and then the other part goes down there. So it's really nice. And I also, of course, I messed it up. There's a little crack there, which I didn't do right. But yeah, I told the people I met there that I would hold it up on this in this video, so doing that. And now I'm gonna actually get to the tag. This is the reading shifts tag, which I think I already said. And I believe it's talking about, well, how one's reading has changed over one's lifetime, which for me is a difficult question, because my lifetime has not necessarily been that long, and my lifetime as a reader has been much shorter. I didn't get into reading until say 4 years ago, or something along those lines, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But I'm gonna try to answer these questions. So question 1 is, how has your reading developed over your lifetime? Do the kind of books that bring you the most pleasure now differ from the books you loved most earlier in your life? If you've seen big changes in your reading since you've matured, what might explain your changing interests? Okay. So I'll start with the first question. How has your reading developed over your lifetime? Well, as a kid, I didn't read much. There were a couple series that I really got into, Percy Jackson being an obvious one. It seems like everyone in my generation read Percy Jackson. Also, there was this Canadian children's publishing line called Scholastic Canada, or something along those lines, and they published some historical fiction novels that were usually based around characters in Canada or something like that. I remember I really loved a book about a fighter pilot, for the Canadian, or maybe it was for the RAF, but it was a fighter pilot, and I remember loving those kinds of books, like historical fiction books. But I didn't really get into reading until say probably around 16. The age of 16 was when the reading bug first hit me, because my brother had convinced me to watch the Harry Potter movies, and we watched all of them, and I thought, wow, that was amazing. And I went and read all the books, and it was one of those experiences where I was very much hooked on the plot, so I wanted to stay up. I did stay up late all night to finish these books. And after that, I was like, okay, reading can be so much fun. I really want to experience this more. And so from there, as a 16-year-old, I was very much looking in the fantasy genre for books that would do that for me. Um, Except, of course, if any of you have watched my channel for any time at all, you'll probably realize that a lot has changed since then. And I think a big reason, probably the primary reason for that, is actually BookTube. Um, because when I was trying to explore what fantasy books to read, I went to YouTube. I looked up what are good fantasy books, and so I found FantasyTube, and started reading some of those books. I read one good one that I really read was the Lives of Locke Lamora, which I'd like to revisit. I also read a bit of Brandon Sanderson, and I'm sure a couple other authors. But even back then, also I wasn't that fast of a reader. I wasn't like a deadlocked habit. It wasn't a solid habit of mine yet. But that was kind of where I was as a 16 and 17-year-old. But somewhere along the line, probably just through the YouTube algorithm, I got recommended. Like, probably just through the YouTube algorithm, I saw a video of, say, Benjamin McAvoy's, and then eventually from there, I found other channels that don't just deal with fantasy books, but also with all kinds of other books. Steve Donahue being one of the main channels that I found early on, probably when I was 17 or so, or 18. And from there, I was kind of converted to try other things as well. And then as a 19-year-old, I joined BookTube, and yeah, so I mean, really, not much time has passed since I started really reading. But I would say that there was a general progression from, as a child, not being too much of a reader, to um, being mostly interested in fantasy, to now really still trying to explore what I like, in classics, but also still in fantasy and still in science fiction, and but also in other genres too, nonfiction. Now, I should say now, nonfiction has been a new love of mine. Just this year, at the beginning of this year, I read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, probably the second nonfiction book I'd ever read in my life. And since then, I think I've read like eight or nine other nonfiction books, and I'm kind of getting hooked on it now. So that's how it has changed over my life. That was kind of long-winded. Sorry about that. So do the kind of books that bring you the most pleasure now differ from the books you loved most earlier in your life? So I think I answered that. If you've seen big changes in your reading since you've matured, what might explain your changing interests? So, BookTube, largely. I mean, just Steve Donahue. I mean, I get recommendations from so many different booktubers, but just Steve Donahue's channel alone, it's a treasure chest of exploration. So yeah, BookTube. I think that's it. Also, I mean, just the fact that I'm in university, so I, I think I have been exposed to other authors that way as well. I have been exposed to classics that way as well, which may have changed my interests. And I did take, I mean, there was, in my second year, I did take a theory class, a literary theory class, most of which, most of the authors that ran that class I thought were not that good. Just maybe some of their ideas were interesting, and maybe a couple were well written, but most were not well written, and I did not like them. But ever since then, I have kind of wanted to return not to theory, but to maybe a more, maybe not philosophy, but something like more critical nonfiction, more maybe academic writing, if I can find an academic who's a really good writer. If that makes sense. I don't really want to get like into philosophy or into theory. That doesn't appeal to me, but I like the idea of reading something that makes me think in a nonfiction form. History is one way of doing that, or just reading essays is another way of doing that. So I suppose also my school has influenced my interests to an extent. And then also I suppose, mm, not never mind. I was gonna say perhaps I do have something of an interest in politics now. Um, Ever since I was 18, I started reading the news, and before then I didn't read the news, but once I was 18, that became a habit, and that has made me more interested in politics and more interested in how politics plays out in history, I think. But primarily the answer would be booktube, I think. Two, do you find yourself choosing different kinds of books at different periods of the year? Um, for example, do the seasons affect what you read for pleasure? Similarly, might you read very different kinds of books while on vacation? Um, Generally, no. No, I'm not a seasonal reader. Even with events like Victober, I haven't really participated in them, partially because there's so many books floating around in my head. There's so many books in my room, and sometimes, I mean, if it's a very large book, it'll take me a whole month to finish one. So it's hard for me to, I find it hard for me to arrange my reading around a specific event when I'm already a slow reader, and it's hard. I mean, I'm already trying to work on other things, so it's hard to veer my reading into a different direction, just for a season or just for an event, no matter how fun an event might be. Um, and it's, Similarly, might you read very different kinds of books while on vacation? Well, vacation, that's something else, I think, because I wouldn't want to start a really large book while on vacation. I think I would just want to read it first of all on my Kobo, and then also, I want to have probably a short one, uh, perhaps a lighter read, because if I'm on vacation, well, I suppose it depends on what kind of traveling you're doing. But I think if I'm on vacation, I'll probably be more preoccupied with discovering what's around me, and a little bit more tired usually as well, perhaps jet lag. So shorter, lighter read for vacation. Three, do specific experiences in your life ever shape what you choose to read? For example, did you read obsessively about child rearing when your kids were little, about gardening as spring is about to begin, about the experience of grief when someone you loved died? A little bit. Well, one instance that came to mind is when a friend of mine did pass away, and I wanted to. I read a couple of books on the subject of suicide and what it's like to go through depression, and that was one instance. Um, on the whole, though, no, I don't think I have, but I think that might just because I haven't been a reader for a long enough time so that I've had any major life changes, um, which have affected my reading or the course of my reading. I'll be really interested to see in the future whether anything shifts, based off of what my life is like, but um, mostly no. Um, Four, have there been any times in your life when circumstances have limited or changed your reading in some way? Perhaps caretaking responsibilities or a big move that made it hard to find as much time to read as you'd like, or personal illness that made it harder to concentrate, or maybe just long-term travel that might have limited your book choices. How do you deal with those circumstances? Mm, hmm. Well, that's the thing. I've never been a caretaker. I've never moved. I've never had a personal illness, and I've never long-term traveled. Um, I did travel for a couple weeks over the summer, and my reading all but stopped during that time. But long-term travel would probably be something else. No, I'm not sure I have an answer for this question. Um, the only thing I can think of is school. Um, a lot of coursework can suffocate the personal reading that I want to do, but it's okay because I am still doing a lot of reading anyway for my school. It's just a different kind of reading. Although sometimes I find that the reading that is for school, it becomes very personal anyway. Like if we read a really good book, then I'll just be obsessed with it and love it and treat it like something that I'm reading for myself. Um, yeah. For example, we read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and I really loved that book. Um, so yeah, so I suppose just school. 5. BookTube is full of discussions of reading slumps, when dedicated readers seem to lose interest for a while in books. Sometimes they just can't find a book that appeals to them. Have you ever experienced a slump? If so, how did you handle it? If not, do you have any advice to give people who are experiencing slumps? I believe I have experienced a slump. And again, it was school induced. It wasn't this year. This year, I've somehow been able to continuously read personally alongside my schoolwork. But last fall, I didn't read. I was reading The Magic Mountain, which was a very long one, but it stopped for about a month straight, and then I picked it up again and was able to finish it throughout the fall. But yeah, that was a slump. But it was mainly just because I think I kind of threw myself very headfirst into my schoolwork, and then just didn't feel like I could. Even if maybe I had the time, I didn't carve out that space in my mind for it, if that makes sense. Um, and actually, I'm trying to be to carve out that space in my mind now. I'm trying to make time for other things other than just school, because I think in my first couple of years I was a little bit too obsessed with the grades that I was getting. Now I'm trying to take on a couple other hobbies and just um, be a bit more balanced in that sense. And now that I'm doing that, I'm not having a reading slump at all. It was just when I got very narrow-mindedly into my schoolwork. Um, where was I? So how did I handle it? Just after a while, I realized that, okay, maybe now I can start making room for this book. Um, if not, do you have any advice to give to people who are experiencing slumps? Um, I'm not sure. Ask Steve. That's what I would say. Um, because Steve always has really good advice, and he always has wonderful recommendations. So if you can't find a book that appeals to you, definitely Steve's channel or Steve's email is always a really wonderful place to go. 6. Booktubers also talk about book hangovers. When readers are so moved by a book that they find it difficult to move on to a new book. Have you ever felt this way? Yes, I often do. Not too often, but I'll say that in general. Actually, I'm a fairly indecisive person when it just comes to making these small decisions. So I'll finish a book and then I'll just kind of torment myself over what I should read next. I think, should it be this book? Should it be that book? And then I'll like sample the first 5 pages of one book and then change my mind and sample the first 5 pages of another. And it's not good because I just go back and forth and I'm just too indecisive. But that's not exactly what's being asked here. Um, there are also times when it's not just that I'm just indecisive, it's also that the world of the book that I was just in, I don't want to leave that world. I want to stay with it. Like I can't remove myself from it. I had that experience when I read Farley Mowat's Never Cry Wolf. It's a very short read, but it hit all the most perfect notes. Humor, but sorrow, but also wonder, and Farley Mowat's voice is just so human and intelligent and witty, and I didn't want to leave it. I spent about a day kind of agonizing over what I should do next, because I just thought, man, I just want to go back to this book. Um, so I've definitely felt that way. At the same time, though, I don't think I don't want to let myself dwell too long on the last book that I read, because then it's just time wasted. Because I'm a slow reader. I only have so much time to live. I gotta, I don't have to, but I really want to keep on discovering new things. And there's just so many books out there. I can't afford to waste time. um, 7. Tell us about a few books that almost always work for you. Something that might have remained a favorite throughout your life, despite any changing reading tastes. Something that always seems to hit just the right spot when you need a lift. Or perhaps some lifetime book hangover, where the text will always be at the back of your mind. Interesting. Um, Again, it's somewhat difficult for me to come up with too many books, because I'm not sure that I've had enough time to reread all of the books that I've read once. I'd very much like to reread a lot of the classics that or not just classics, but any of the books that I've read already. But there's so many new books calling to me. It feels like I don't have time to read for a second time or a third time or a fourth time some of the books that I have already read and have already loved. That being said, there are a couple that come to mind. I'm just going to pull them out. Okay, I have a couple books here. 2 of them are poets, 2 of them are novels. I'll start with the novels. The first one is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This was probably the first classic that I really got into. I think I read this in my senior year of high school, and then I reread it. Actually, here's the story with it. I read it once in my senior year of high school, and didn't like it. I thought, what is this? It's boring, is what I thought it was. But I kind of thought, there must be something here that I'm missing. Everyone loves this novel. So I think within the span of a few months, I went back to it, and something clicked the second time. Suddenly, like I think what was wrong the first time was that I was comparing it to more, maybe more outspoken or more ribald TV romances that I had watched before. Whereas Pride and Prejudice, a lot of the humor, rather than just being really out there and easy to get, a lot of the humor is very ironic and very witty and subtle, and so something clicked the second time, and I kind of got that and just loved it. It was so charming, and definitely I read that twice, and then I listened to Steve's read along of it. Haven't been back to it since, so I can't say that it's something I've turned to in hard times, but it's always kind of been there. It's always kind of been there as a an origin story for my love of classic novels, and I know in the back of my mind that it's waiting for me, and that it will. I'm pretty confident that it will remain the same delightful novel that I found it to be the second time around. So that's there for me. I know that this is there for me. Same thing with this one. This is Room with a View. I read this twice, the most recent time being this summer, and I don't think this is nearly as great a novel as Pride and Prejudice. But in its own way, it really charmed me and really moved me, and it's essentially it's also a comic romance novel, and there are a lot of scenes that are really hilarious, and some that are just really joyful, but yeah, the character of Lucy, she's always in the back of my mind, and some of the quotes in here. I mentioned this book in my favorite quotes video, and some of the quotes in here are really just wonderful, and they definitely stay with me. And I know that this is a light, fairly light, short read to go to if I just want to turn to something, perhaps in a hard time. The next are 2 poets. I could have mentioned a couple more poets here, but I think these 2 will do. The first is Alfred Lord Tennyson. And it's interesting because this is a poet that I haven't been back to in a while. Him and Wordsworth were probably 2 of my first loves when it comes to poetry. Since then, I've been kind of dwelling more with more modernist poets or more contemporary poets. But Alfred Lord Tennyson is some of his poems are always in the back of my head. Um, my favorite might be Mort d'Arthur, which may not be a very popular choice. I think probably his most famous is Ulysses or Tithonus, or his vast in memoriam Arthur Henry Hallam, which is um, his elegy for his dead friend. And I love some of the lyrics in that poem too. But Mort d'Arthur, that one also deals with themes of grief, and it's really, I mean, it's really, essentially it's Arthurian fiction, but in Tennyson's hands, it's just magic. It's amazing. Tennyson. My interest in, or my interest in different eras of poetry has changed. That has kind of shifted, but Tennyson will always be a poet that I love. And this is one poet who I suppose is more of the era that I seem to be drawn to for some reason. William Butler Yeats. And he is also, I go to him very much when I'm maybe in a somber mood, or I'm feeling kind of I don't know, like moody. if I'm feeling rebellious or something like that. His verse is so beautiful, and so meditative, and I know that if I go to certain poems of his, it will always just provide me with company. And I just love that. So yeah, that is my not very coherent explanation of those books that I love. Sorry if I'm not delivering this tag very well. It's 9:45 right now, which is actually not that late, but I feel pretty tired. So that's it. That's pretty much it. I feel like I didn't really do this tag very well at all, but I think I might just post it anyway. Now I did prepare a list of people that I want to tag, and I believe that none of these people have done this tag yet. So first is Isaiah at Jaw Reads, Denson at Robin Song Reads, who we haven't heard from in a while. I hope I hope everything is going well with him. Mike at Bibliophile Bookscape, who is a new channel, a relatively new channel. He only has 70-something subscribers, so if anyone's still watching this video and wants to go subscribe to Mike, he's a really wonderful channel. And so yeah, Sailing Through Books as well, another great channel. John Blair at Fiction Orbit, of course. Joe Spivey. I'll see if I can draw him out of his writer's hole. Isaiah at That Reading Guy, and Jenny Jables. So that's it. Thank you for watching BookTube, and goodbye.